In relation to the words that are here is that concrete was the defining material of modernist, at least Brazilian architecture. But it was the element that allowed modern architecture to develop in Brazil the way it has. So, I mean, for me, like, when I look at concrete, it's like a direct reference.
And in terms of sculptures, also perhaps more if you look at the plinth, it's also a sort of dialogue with the legacy of Brancusi and the idea of including the plinth within the work, and to have to look more at the plinth as a work of art or as the object on top of it. I think if you look at the booth here, maybe that will become even clearer. So now we are going to end with an artist with quite different and seems almost out of place, perhaps, within this display, but actually does fit in as well. Her name is Sandra Vázquez de la Hora. She's a Chilean artist who lives in Berlin. And she shows here with the Sanda Gallery from Barcelona. She actually creates this work that are either her own drawings, or sometimes prints, or sometimes she founds material that are letters, found letters, for example, as the backdrop for her drawings. And then she creates this sort of haunted, highly narrative sort of drawings that are quite obsessive in a way, and often quite erotic, perhaps almost to the limit of pornographic. And very often, dealing with death, you will often have skulls and skeletons in her work. And so the work is very almost cartoonish by certain aspects, draws you in because of this notion of narrative, but also evokes its black and white with some elements of red in the work. She has another particularity, which is that once the drawing is finished, she dips it in wax, and so hence the sort of yellowish color that gives a certain patina to the drawing, but also prevents her from touching the drawing anymore. At one point the process is completed and she can't go any further. But I think the way in which she links to this display is that she takes back a very strong tradition of printmaking in Latin America, especially at the turn of the century. I think if you think of Mexico in particular, and people like Posadas, for example, who created this commission, actually publicly funded commissions of prints that were political prints, and that often dealt with the notion of death and the passage of time. I think that her work very much is engraved in this. And so in that sense, she works with this tradition of print that Cipriano Martinez, with a sort of boat, half-buried boat, or who else does the print? Oh yes, and Jaime Gili also works with this idea of prints. And so we have several of these artists who have been working with prints, also a very strong tradition in Latin America. I think that's about all we can say. I think that on this notion of exile, I think that I like this idea that of this very famous sort of reflection by Italo Calvino, who was himself an exile most of his life, that the ideal place for me is the one which is in which it is the most natural to live as a foreigner. And I think this is very much what we've tried to convey, this sense of being a foreigner and being very creative and inspired as a result of that. So, if you want to...
I think that's all. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Okay, well, I think it's been a long presentation, so thank you very much all of you for coming. Enjoy it.